Magic Emperor Chapter 878. Zhuo Fan looked at the old man and calmly replied that the dragon ancestor had given him a mission, and he needed Gusantum's help. Plus, since this whole thing involves the boy directly, there's no way he's leaving his son behind. Thumping wondered why, if the dragon ancestor gave him the job, he wouldn't just handle it himself to keep things low-key and smooth. He figured if things got hairy, Zhuo Fan could just use a jade slit to call for backup, and that bringing the kid along would just be a total drag. He suggested the best move would be to leave the boy right here with him. He promised to give the kid some proper training, since the Kylan's power would be a must-have once the sacred beasts eventually teamed up. Thumping narrowed his eyes, his voice dripping with calculation. Hearing that, Zhuo Fan just gave a cold, dismissive smirk and asked if he really thought he was the right guy for the job. He made it clear he knew exactly what went down with the tyrant-cleaving Thunder Emperor. He was worried that before Gusantum could even grow up, the old man would suck him dry of his Kylan power and leave him for dead. He emphasized that his son was absolutely not going to end up in that kind of danger. Gusantum was floored by what he heard, and looked at his dad with total concern. Zhuo Fan gently comforted his son, telling him that if he trusted him, they should go together, and he'd explain the whole story later. Knowing the kid was confused, he did his best to put his mind at ease. Gusantum thought about it for a second, looked deep into his father's eyes, and gave a small nod. Pumping let out a harsh laugh and asked if Zhuo Fan really thought he could just walk away that easily. He questioned whether Zhuo Fan thought this place was some revolving door where he could just come and go as he pleased. He asked if leaving was actually going to be that simple. Zhuo Fan flashed a knowing smile, and replied that things were different now. He snapped his fingers, and a massive, glowing golden fireball instantly materialized in his palm. Pumping was completely stunned when he realized it was the dragon ancestor's dragon breath pill. The three-headed crow standing nearby was so spooked he actually tucked his head in to avoid getting caught in the blast. Pumping asked if Zhuo Fan really thought he could take him down with nothing but a single dragon breath pill. He quickly got his swagger back and laughed with cold contempt. He reminded him that the secret beasts had never been able to settle who was stronger, so he wasn't scared of that thing at all. Zhuo Fan's lips curled into a mysterious grin as he asked if the old man was truly as fearless as he claimed. He calmly explained that since the sacred beasts were evenly matched, even the dragon ancestor couldn't touch him, let alone a single pill. However, he pointed out that all of that was ancient history. He asked Kunpeng if he'd forgotten the real reason why he hadn't been able to leave the All-Beast mountain range all this time. At those words, Kunpeng started shaking, and his face turned incredibly sour. Zhuo Fan stated flatly that the old man had to rely on the aura of all the beasts just to hide his location. He explained that while the dragon breath pill might not kill him outright, it had enough juice to wipe the entire All-Beast mountain range off the map. Once that happened, his covert would be totally blown, and Zhuo Fan doubted he'd survive if the Heavenly Emperor came looking for him. Kunpeng's eyes flickered with fear, and finally, he let out a sigh and waved them off. He asked if Zhuo Fan was actually strong enough to protect the boy right now. He warned that even though he was a sacred beast prince, the boy was still just a kid, and plenty of people would want a piece of him. Zhuo Fan declared that from here on out, he would definitely be able to keep his son safe. After putting the pill away, Zhuo Fan's gaze turned rock solid and a mysterious black flame erupted in his left eye. He drove the point home by saying that he was the boy's father. With that, he grabbed Gusantum's hand and walked away without looking back. Kunpeng just stood there watching them go, completely spooked and wary of Zhuo Fan's intense presence. He wondered what on earth that look in his eyes was to be that terrifying. The three-headed crow scrambled over and knelt down, apologizing for leading Zhuo Fan there because he'd been too scared to say no. Kunpeng looked at the crow, then at Zhuo Fan's disappearing figure, and sighed as he realized the man had changed completely. Across the 5 continents, Central State is the place where the Star One Empire holds absolute power. It's the most prosperous and powerful region, packed with countless high-level experts. In other places, an ethereal stage expert might be a big deal, but in Central State, they were only good enough to guard the gates. Heck, even the guards patrolling the streets are all at the ethereal stage. People from the other 4 continents are always blown away by Central State's power when they first arrive. They were especially impressed by how an entire continent is unified into one nation, which is a far cry from the scattered divisions elsewhere. The unity of the powerhouses here is enough to make anyone think twice. If ethereal stage experts are treated like bottom-tier staff, then lower-level cultivators are basically stuck doing grunt work. Because of that, the big shots who used to run things elsewhere find themselves totally outclassed here. Everyone has to be incredibly careful and watch their step in everything they do. and that included Zhuo Fan and his son. They used to be the ones causing all the chaos, but now, in this place, they have to keep a low profile just to stay alive. Zhuo Fan stopped and wondered exactly where they had ended up. Right in front of them was a massive city called Flying Cloud City. Here, every cultivator has to land and wait in an orderly line just to get inside. Two old men with powerful auras were standing guard at the gate. They were probably high-ranking figures back where they came from, but here they were just running the checkpoint. They were being super strict with their inspections for anyone trying to enter the city. It wasn't clear what had happened to make the situation so incredibly tense. A man in black leading a young boy walked up to the two old men, acting all humble and claiming they were running from enemies. The two old men looked at them suspiciously, and asked about them being hunted. They checked the man out, and laughed at him, because his power was only at the 5th layer of the Radiant stage. They figured a weakling like him couldn't possibly cause any trouble, so they gave him the green light to pass. Zhuo Fan thanked them quickly and grabbed his son's hand, hurrying into the city. He led the kid away, as fast as he could, looking like he was escaping some major threat. Watching them go, the two old men kept mocking how weak people from the boonies were. They figured the weak wouldn't last a day in Central State. They shared a laugh filled with pure contempt. After that, the two old men went back to checking the line of people behind them. But right then, both of them suddenly felt a cold shiver run down their spines that made them tremble. It felt like they were being stalked by some dangerous predator from behind. They turned around to check, but didn't see anything out of the ordinary in the crowded street. The two old men looked at each other, wondering what that uneasy feeling was all about. One of them admitted he felt like there was a threat just waiting to pounce on him. The other one asked if his partner had felt the same thing. The other old man gave a heavy nod in agreement. Then they tried to convince themselves they were just on edge because of all the crazy stuff that had been happening lately. They mentioned a certain big shot who had punished a lot of experts, which still had them spooked. They believed that no criminal would be brave enough to show their face while they were on watch. In the end, they figured that real powerhouses wouldn't even give a second thought to guards like them. The old man gave a forced smile and went back to his job with a blank expression. Meanwhile, in a dark corner of the city, Zhuo Fan was holding his hand over Gu Santum's mouth to keep him quiet. Once he saw that things at the gate had settled down, he finally breathed a sigh of relief and let go. Right away, the kid got all worked up because those two old men had to look down on them. He claimed he'd never had to swallow such an insult in his life. He said if his dad hadn't held him back, he would be taken those two out a long time ago. He swore he'd make them pay if he ever got the chance. Zhuo Fan explained that if they'd done that, they never would have made it out of there alive. He looked up, showing a face that had a much deeper and more composed vibe than before. He didn't look vengeful anymore. Instead, he seemed profoundly mysterious and hard to read. He patted his son's head and smiled, saying this place was a whole different ball game compared to Western State. He explained that Flying Cloud City was a major hub with tons of guards, so blowing their cover would be a disaster. Gu Santum wondered why they even needed to worry since his dad had the dragon breath pill. The kid thought they could just use it to wipe out anyone who gave them a hard time. The boy boldly announced just how confident he was. Zhuo Fan let out a sigh and reminded him they only had 2 dragon breath pills left, so they couldn't afford to waste them. He emphasized that the dragon breath pill was a weapon of mass destruction in this world. More importantly, he maintained that real safety has to come from your own strength. He didn't want to rely on outside items because that would mess with his own cultivation progress. That was the reason he'd been training so hard to keep his power under control for the last 2 years.